Welcome back to note taking. So we're going to keep going. Just pick up where you left off. So let's get started. All right. First, we're going to talk about biotic factors, and these are things that are in the environment that are living. So biotic factors can be any of those living organisms we've already discussed. So those are the plants, the animals, anything that has life that's part of the ecosystem. Take your notes. Right. Our next one is going to be abiotic factors. So we said that biotic factors are those living things that live in ecosystems. Abiotic factors are the non-living things that affect the ecosystem or the habitat. So these are things, the one point of confusion that sometimes happens, especially in fifth grade, is that we think just because they're non-living means they're dead. Now, just because something is non-living doesn't mean it was ever alive. So we're talking about things like the soil, the air, the temperature, water, sunlight, things like that that definitely affect the ecosystem or the habitat, but may not necessarily be alive. And even though there might be living things inside of the water or inside of the soil, that doesn't necessarily give them life itself. These become really important when you are thinking of the amount of rainfall, or if there's enough shelter, or if there's the temperature's right for different species to live. So while it might be weird to think that non-living things do affect habitat, they really do. They're really, really important and can cause a lot of chaos if they're not right. Right, the next one, as you can see, is an L to J word. That's why there's a smiley face there, is nutrient. And a nutrient is just something that's necessary for the animal or living thing's survival. So a lot of things rely on air, water, and food. Okay, so the next few are just kind of like fun words. We don't get too far into it. But they're just about different bacteria. So the first one we're going to talk about is aerobic. And basically, the aerobic bacteria, there has to be oxygen. And the way I remember this word is you think of like an aerobic exercise. You need a lot of oxygen because you're breathing hard. So if you're doing aerobics, you have to breathe a lot. So you need all that oxygen. And of course, since we did aerobic, we're going to do anaerobic. And so these are organisms that it's actually toxic if they are exposed to oxygen. So these are without oxygen. And this is just another bacteria. They're not very common, but good to know. It is one of our L to J words. All right, our next thing that we're going to discuss is the energy pyramid. And if you watch some of your Symbaloo videos, as we did, we went through this a little bit. Essentially, it just shows the relationship in energy transfer in a food chain. So our producers are always at the bottom, and they get 100% of their energy from the sun. And then as it goes up, the energy transfer actually is less and less. So their primary producers, I think I said consumers. Producers, I meant, is at the bottom, and they get their energy from the sun. But producers give their energy to the primary consumers, and the primary consumers give it to the secondary consumers, just as you think of a food chain. So you have the sun, it starts with the grass gives its energy to the first animal, and then the animal that eats that animal, and it just kind of continues. And as we keep going through this unit, we'll kind of talk about how that energy transfers. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I keep waving in front of the camera. There is a fly and it is driving me bonkers. All right, our next word is dispersal. And all dispersal means is it's just the spread of a species. And so we think of dispersal a lot when we think of like seed transfer and things like that. So I put this lovely dandelion to help you remember. Right, our next one is symbiosis. It'll also be referred to as a symbiotic relationship. And a symbiotic relationship is just a relationship between two or more organisms. There's 3 different types that we're going to discuss. So yeah, that's what these next 3 slides are all about. So symbiosis or symbiotic relationship, that comes up, you'll know it's the same thing as symbiosis. Okay, next we have, or the first one, oh geez, covering up your picture. There you go. So we're going to talk about mutualism. And mutualism just is one of the symbiotic relationships we are going to talk about. And it actually benefits both organisms to be a part of it. So I give you a couple examples down here. We have the remora and the ray, the manta ray. Essentially, what it is the remora relies on the ray to get food. And so it'll hang around the manta ray. After the manta ray eats, it actually eats all the scraps. Then the ray gets benefited because they also eat a bacteria off of the manta ray to help it survive. So they're both getting something out of the relationship, which is awesome. All right, my next one, I'm going to grab my cheat sheet real quick because I always pronounce this word wrong. So we have ants on the, I always want to say acai, but it's acacia. Ants on the acacia tree. And so essentially it's the same kind of thing. Those ants live there and protect the acacia tree from different insects. So there's these other little bugs that are trying to attack it, and the ants actually eat it. And I mean, they're both benefiting, right? One gets protection and the ants get to have a free dinner, essentially. So they both are benefiting. As you're taking notes, I would suggest putting a smiley face and then a line and then a smiley face, just so that kind of shows that they are both benefiting. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'll show you real quick. This is what I had our students at school do. They just made a smiley face and a smiley face inside their notebooks, just to give them a reminder when they're doing their worksheet what mutualism is. They both benefit. They're both pretty happy with the situation. All right, our next one is commensalism. And commensalism is another type of symbiotic relationship, like I've said about 50 times. Except this one benefits and the other one is unaffected. It doesn't really harm the other plant, but it does really help the one organism. So for this instance, we're going to talk about orchids, and orchids are often found in rainforests. And in rainforests, there's several different layers. And if they tried to grow on the ground, they would be pretty unsuccessful because the sunlight doesn't reach the ground. So the orchids have adapted to this and started growing on the side of trees. This way, the orchids can still grow, and they're able to get that sunlight they need. And it really doesn't harm the tree. It doesn't bother the tree. The tree's like, this is fine. So in this instance, we'd say commensalism, because while the orchids definitely need the trees, the tree doesn't really need the orchid. All right, and so for this one, we drew this little thing in our notebooks. That just, sorry about that. So that just kind of show us that one is benefiting, one's super happy, and the other one doesn't really mind. Now the really gross one. Aren't you excited? You waited till the very end to see this grossness. All right, so I'm sure as you already can see, parasitism kind of reminds you of the word parasite, right? So in a parasitism, one of the organism benefits and one is harmed. So I gave you the example of tapeworms in a person or an animal. Now the tapeworms love being in a person or an animal because they get all their nutrients and they grow and they thrive. Well, it doesn't end so well for those people or those animals. They have harm or they get harmed in that situation. The same goes for a tick on a person or an animal. I'm sure you've heard of a tick. You may have even had a tick. Essentially, the tick is living its best life, getting all the nutrients it can from the person or the animal, and the person or animal is not too happy because, it's my blood. Leave that alone. So yeah, for this, we actually use this symbol, which I'm sure you've already guessed it, but I'll show you just in case. So one is super happy, the other one's pretty bummed out. So that's going to be it for note taking for this unit. You're all finished. Congratulations, you made it. Rock star. So stay tuned for more science videos. They're going to be awesome. right? Like I said before, if you have any questions or need me to re-explain anything, please email me or call me and just let me know, and I will do my best to help. All right. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.